most people call humility is actually arrogance, and what some people consider arrogant is the truest form of humility. Hang tight, it will all make sense in this conversation. Hello, my friends. My name is Chad, and this is the Naked Leadership Podcast, high-stakes conversations for relentless company founders. My co-hosts and I have over 6 decades of combined experience in leadership coaching, and this podcast is where we explore it all. There is no conversation too risky. In this conversation, Adrian and I discuss the most common misconceptions about humility. I want to quickly remind you that Dan is not in this conversation once again, as he's taking care of the needs of that of his family in this time of tragedy. If you're looking for a way to help, I've linked the GoFundMe page in the description, or you can send Dan a message. In this time of turmoil for their family, anything helps. Thank you. Now let's dive in. Adrian, I want to play a game with you.
Okay.
You ready? So the topic today is humble leadership. Okay. I'm going to count to 3, and we're going to both say what we think most leaders think humility is. Just one word, right? Does the game make sense? So I'm going to count to 3. We're going to both see it. See if we're in sync. Ready?
What most people think humility is? Humble leadership?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Humble leadership.
Yeah. 1 or 2 words.
Okay.
Okay. Ready? You got yours?
I think so.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Being nice.
Weakness.
They're basically the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weakness. Why do you say weakness?
Well, humble leadership. Well, if that guy had a pair, he'd go in there and say that.
Ah, yeah.
You know, he's the boss. Why doesn't he set things straight around here? Why doesn't he tell her to leave? Why doesn't he blah da 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 da? Oh, he must be weak.
Mm.
And I was just on with a guy talking about this is a potential client, and he's a very measured fella. Measured. He's been around the block. He is a stud. And nothing to prove, really. You know, he's like a very substantial guy, and he's really measured, and he's dealing with a person that's in his organization that founded the organization. And I said, your measuredness is a gift to the abused in the organization. It's not a gift to the abuser in the organization.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, he's a measured cat, very professional. He knows how to help people that are having a hard time.
When you say measured, is he careful?
He's careful, thoughtful, deliberate, poised. And he's great at like helping hold things together, but he's gonna need to generate more edge in order to deal with the issues that are creating the chaos. He's good at dealing with the collateral damage, but and I'll connect it to the point here. Like, he's got humility, and part of humility is, I think, seeing yourself right, like having a right-sized view of yourself. And if you have a right-sized view of yourself, you're not out to prove something. So if I'm confident in myself, and if I know who I am, I don't need to go in guns blazing to prove to you that I'm something.
Yeah.
And if you are humble, then I can come in and bring a 2x4 to some guy, or say something that's really harsh or direct or to the point, and cut all the fluff. And I can do that from a place of advocacy for them. I'm not there to prove it about myself.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So, I think when people, to your point, let me agree with yours, is that a lot of people like, if I'm humble, then I must be nice. And that's a little bit of what I was talking to this gentleman about, is like, hey, it's not going to work. It works when you lead, when you're serving these types of people. It's not going to work when the guy that you're talking about, the one he has complaints about, he's got to fight fire with fire over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. For me, the niceness is like, it's a stage show. Like, look how humble I am. let me show you how humble, rather than just living in the humility. I wanted to, like, I had this right-sized quote from you in my notes, wanted to ask you more about it. I really love it. I want to dive more into it. When you talk about being right-sized or thinking of yourself as right-sized, is that just knowing who you are, knowing the space that you take, knowing the capabilities that you have, and being comfortable with that? Is that how you would describe being right-sized?
Well, so what do I mean by right sized? I mean that I'm taking full responsibility for every aspect of my being. That's what I really mean. So now, if I translate that into like regular people's language, I mean that I know what I'm really great at and I fully own it, like really fully own it. And I'm unapologetic about what I'm great at. And I also know what I'm not great at, and I fully own that. I'm not great at these things, and I don't prefer them. I don't like them, and some things I don't want to get good at. So I'm not going to put on a show like, oh, I didn't have time to do it. I don't want to do that thing. I'm never going to want to do that thing. And
So, well, look, can I pause you there for just 1 second? I just want to dig
mhm,
into each of those. So the latter, I get, that's
that's
humility,
humility, quote
right? The
unquote.
the latter you talk about, like, oh, if somebody can self-deprecate, not defecate, deprecate,
Or decorate. Yeah.
decorate.
Merry Christmas.
If they're self-deprecating, or if they're, if they know their weaknesses, and that's humility. But the first thing you said was, if they know what they're good at, and they live in it boldly, my words, not yours, but that's
Yeah,
that's how I, like,
right on.
translate it. What the hell? That's not humility.
Yeah.
How's that
Well,
humility?
humility. Yeah. So back to being right sized. And even if it's, let me stretch it a little bit too. So, um, how do I say that? Um, okay, there's like a handful of points here. I'll try to be quick, or see if I can organize them on the fly here. The uh, first off, where to begin? I remember walking in front of a room. I don't know, the first Impact series. At some point, I just said it's okay to be a badass here, and people liked that clip. That it ended up going out on social media. So you got to own what you're great at, which, as I said earlier, like it is humility to not be in any level of avoidance that I'm responsible for my gifts. And it's false humility to not be responsible for my gifts.
It's arrogance to not
That's
be
right.
yeah.
That's right. So yeah, if I don't own, I mean, similar to the conversation you and I had earlier today, where it's like, hey, I need to be spending my time doing these things, and which involves me coaching less
Mm-hmm.
and spending more time, working, and generating ideas and writing and content creation. And, um, that's, anyway, I'm responsible for that gift, and I can get by not standing fully in my gift. I can get by with myself anyway. And but my best gift and my most, so what is, I mean, so part of the way to look at humility as well is like, I live in service of, like, so I'm right sized, so I'm living in service of a vision.
Yes.
So in order for me to live in service of a vision, I need to get really intentional about the best use of my time. So that's right size. Like, I see myself as a means to an end as well. And I know the power and potential of me being fully alive. And I know ways in which I can betray that as well, right? So most people, to your point earlier, think about humility as, oh, he's in touch with his dark side. Yes. And is he fully owned his bright side?
Yeah.
So
Which I think is not a common understanding of the idea of humility. I love when you talk about, great for the service of a vision. I am really fucking good at this, and I'm using it to serve the vision that I see is worthwhile for myself and the people around me, my family, my team, all of that sort of stuff. And if here's the kicker for me, which is the other side of the coin is if I'm great at it, if I'm great at that, and it's clear that it's a gift for me, that it's a gift that I can offer, and I don't offer it boldly, that is arrogance. Because I'm just as much as if I was being great in the service of being great, like, look at me, I'm great, that's arrogance. But if I also don't use the gift in the service of the vision and be great in it, that's also arrogance. And I had a client that I absolutely love who came to one of our recent revenants, and he's just such a talented dude and such a gift to people in every like everywhere he goes, he could be such a gift. And he really stood back. He really held back in that experience for most of it. I had a conversation with him and was just giving him some feedback. He was asking me about how and his idea was like, well, I'm holding back, I'm giving other people a chance to do their thing, like get their discoveries, all of that sort of stuff. Like, and I just said, man, that's a really arrogant position. And he was floored. And he still brings it up to me almost every conversation that we have. It was so impactful for him. It is that realization that if I've got this gift, if I'm great in a way, and I choose not to use it in the service of what we say we're about together, then that's not humility. The only constant in an organization like yours is change. I want to take just a second to tell you about The Change Imperative, an ebook written by our very own Dan Tacchini. Let me ask you, how do you personally relate to change in your business? Does it feel like a threat at times? Does it ever feel like you can't keep up with it, or it never happens fast enough? Are there certain players on your team that resist change and keep your company stuck? Growth, change, and transition, these intersections often come with confusion, frustration, and resistance. You can flip those experiences into clarity, confidence, and alignment with the Change Imperative ebook. The Change Imperative is instructions for innovating with your team. Go ahead and click on the link in the show notes to get your free copy of the Change Imperative now, and feel confident about creating the change in your company necessary to take it to the next level.
Yeah, right on. Well, and I think, and I remember that conversation, and I know this guy really well, and I know the impact you had, and it takes boldness even to say that to somebody, because you're advocating for him in that moment. And I think most of us spend a lot of time thinking that we don't want to be like the crap we see others being. Meaning, like, if somebody else is speaking for their own narcissistic end, and I don't want to come off that way, like, because most of, like, we're like doing the math on, I don't want them to think that I'm doing this. And instead, so then we hold back, which was his tension, right? Is he didn't want to seem or look like blank, instead of knowing in himself that, hey, I got something to say and it's here to be a gift for them. And that takes humility to put yourself out there and to face the ridicule, to face the judgment, to face the, if people don't like you, and or they resist you, or you're not as great as you think you are. So it takes humility to stick your neck out and to be great. I mean, remember, like, it's definitely in the New Zealand or mostly
Tall
oceanic,
poppy.
the tall
Yeah.
poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
Lots of cultures have been crafted that way, where it's like, if you're great, you're a target.
Yeah.
And if you're great, go ahead. My invitation to you is go be a target.
Yeah,
It's okay.
totally.
It'll make you more resilient. Go be a target.
Yeah. And it will end up, in one way or another, it will end up serving the vision you say you're committed to, either by, exposing what's not available in the culture. And that's great for you and for everybody else. What I mean by that is, like, if you go in there and you're great and there's not room for you to be great, that's not the place for you, probably. unless the culture's really ready to rally around you being
Mm-hmm.
great, right?
Right on.
Um,
I
the
say that to clients all the time, by the way, like people that are like in, they're working at some company and they're looking at, shifting and doing something else. Really, the conversation is, let's go find your next team that isn't threatened by your excellence. Which is, it's freeing for people because they're looking for a new context. They're like looking, it's like, let me go find like a whole set of like, beliefs and system and core values that like I can go be great and it's not a problem.
yeah, yeah, yeah. One of the as I was thinking about this topic, I was kind of going back through some of your older social media posts. You were what I don't know if you remember writing this or not, but there was one about humility, and you tied honesty to humility. From my perspective, there was like honesty is what I got from it is like honesty is a crucial ingredient for humility. Um, and I thought that was interesting, right? Uh, and that might be exactly what we're talking about. Is how honest are you willing to be with yourself and other people about how great where you're great and where you're not great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me channel Dan as he's not on this call or on this podcast today. I know that he always is quick to bring up, and I appreciate it every time he does, that the humility is founded in or is etymologically connected to the word grounded.
Mm.
So like I'm rooted, and you
Mm-hmm.
can't, you're not going to, so I don't mean grounded like lowly, I mean rooted. So you can only be rooted in the truth.
Yeah.
You can be other things in other things, but you can't be grounded in like a false narrative. Otherwise, you're just not grounded. So, and how do you, right? You're something else. And how do you get to the truth? Well, you got to be really willing to be honest. Like, there's no conversation that I can't have with myself. And that takes some work, more work than it just sounds like. It sounds like, oh, sure, I'm really honest with myself. Well, are you really? Right? Is there any conversation you're avoiding? Is there anything that you're unwilling to talk to about yourself? Is there anything that you wouldn't want somebody else to hear if they were listening in between your ears? Is there anything you're ashamed of? Anything you're embarrassed about? Anything you hope people don't find out? Anything like, whatever the conversation is. Like, if you're not willing to explore and be honest with yourself, then it's going to make the humility conversation much more shallow. But if you can own all that and you're really honest about it, and you're honest in such a way that at times you're dishonest, like you're inauthentic, and if you can be authentic about your inauthenticity, wow, you gotta, like, there's no conversation that you can't have with yourself. And if you're in that place, there's no conversation you can't have with anybody else. So, I think that's the connection for me, is like, if I will naturally keep people out of a conversation I don't want to have with myself, and it's going to betray any, like, on that continuum that we've been talking about this whole time, like how great you are or how you really blow it, like your best gifts and your dark side, whatever. Like, if you're not having either one of those conversations with honesty, then you're going to keep other people out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the conversation with yourself, and then also the conversations externally, right? The honesty that's required there, and humility is like when you think about giving somebody feedback, if they're missing it, if they're not showing up the way that you all have committed to be together as a team, and they're missing it, they're not showing up, you may feel like there may be a misconception that it would be arrogant to go and tell them how they're missing it, or show them, or be with them in how they're missing it. But actually, that's the most humble thing you could do, because it's honest and it's grounded in the truth. And so want to just be clear, like, it's not only the conversations we're having with ourselves, but it's the conversations we're willing or unwilling to have with the people that are outside of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's I'll put my cap on this part here.
Yeah.
It's like, as we talk about the purpose. So what's the purpose of this conversation? What's the gift of it? What's the usefulness of it? Well, people we naturally as humans want to keep getting better. We want to keep developing. We want to keep evolving. We want to think our experience of ourselves and life is like tomorrow is going to be better than today, or next year is going to be better than this year. And in order to have that conversation with ourselves, and especially if you got people working for you, they're not going to say this, but if you want them to last for a long term, they need to get better as human beings while they work there. Like, if I work here, I get better. Now, most people might not even be connected to that conversation, but that's a core human thing. Like, I can evolve, I'm getting better. And if you can have this conversation with them, an honest one, with the eye on what's possible for them and what they want moving forward. And so it's you get to reality, but not in a place of condemnation, but one of development, one of acceptance, and then ownership and moving forward. Then everybody gets better. Everybody grows. We connect. More is possible if we're willing to be connected to current reality. So that's the purpose of it. Like, humility gets us more connected, and then we can do more together, do something new together.
Yeah. I love that being on our team makes me such a better person, or I create myself as a better person to be on this team. So thank you for that. Beautifully, clearly stated, man. Loved it. Thanks so much for the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right. Love you, brother. Bye-bye, everybody. Well, my friends, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Naked Leadership Podcast. As a heads up, every Friday we post a Cliff Notes version of that week's conversation with all the highlights in under 5 minutes. Check that out for a quick and powerful reminder of the principles discussed. I hope this conversation has been valuable to you. If it has, the greatest compliment you could pay us is sharing it with somebody who could use it. Thanks so much for listening, and until next week, bye-bye, everybody.